What about the goals of psychology? As we said before, psychology is a science. And by definition, because psychology is a science, by definition, psychology has four aims, like any science. The first aim is to describe its phenomena. Number two, to explain these phenomena. And number three, to predict them. Number four, how to control or modify these psychological phenomena. I mean behavior and the mental processes. What about the first aim of psychology? Description. Psychology is the scientific study of mind and the behavior. And while you might understand what psychology is, many people are not quite so sure about what psychology does. What purpose does psychology serve? What are its goals? Let us take a closer look at the major goals of psychology. And the first one is description. Description can be defined as it refers to naming and classifying without asking why. So in this aim, just we are try and classify. Classification is included in description, but without asking why, without any understanding or explanation, because understanding or explanation is the second aim of psychology. And it should be as free as possible from biases which arise from personal values and personal interests. And we have some questions included in the descriptive study, such as what happens when the right side of the brain is damaged? To what extent creative thinking differs from intelligence? Just to discriminate between creative thinking and intelligence. This is some sort of description. How many types of memory are there? This is classification. And you should know that useful knowledge must begin with accurate description. So one of the first goals of psychology is simply to describe behavior. Through description, through describing the behavior of humans and other animals, we are better able to understand it and gain a better perspective on what is considered normal and abnormal. Psychology researchers utilize a range of research methods to help describe behavior, including naturalistic observation, case studies, correlational studies, surveys, and self-report inventors. Researchers may start by observing human behavior and then describing a problem. By understanding what is happening, psychologists can then work on the phenomena, and then they can move to ask about why the behavior happens, and this is the second goal, and even how to change or modify this behavior, and this is the fourth goal. So to summarize what we said before, psychology description is the ability to name and classify without asking why. And in the description is the first goal of any science. And any science, any any useful knowledge must begin with accurate description. After describing any behavior, psychologists begin to think about what are about the factors that contribute to this behavior, that contribute, for example, to the development of any behavior, contribute to the personality, social behavior, mental health problem. And through This interest in discovering the explanation of this behavior, they will be able to discover the cause-effect relationships. I mean, they will be able to identify the variables, the factors, the mechanisms which cause or maintain the phenomenon. So we can define, as you see, explanation as a way to establish cause-effect relationship, or in another way, in explanation we can answer the question of why, or in explanation we can identify the variables, factors, mechanisms which cause or maintain the phenomena. All of these can be considered definitions for explanation or understanding. So we can differentiate between description and explanation as follows. In description, just you are trying to describe, to name, to classify the phenomena without asking why. But if you are interested in questioning about the causes, if you are trying to establish cause-effect relationship, if you are trying to identify the variables, the factors that affect the behavior, in that case you will move from description to explanation or understanding. In description you cannot answer the question of why, but in understanding or explanation you can also answer the question of why. Take care, the second aim is explanation and also is referred to as understanding. After finishing the description of the psychological phenomena and finishing explanation of it by discovering the causes of it, the cause-effect relationships, the factors that cause the phenomena and maintain it, now we have to move to the third aim of psychology. In this aim, we will ask about the prediction. If you would be able to know some about the phenomena and its causes, in that case you will be able to use this information to make predictions about when and why and how it might happen again in the future. So we can define prediction as it refers to the ability to accurately forecast or predict overt and covert behavior, of course, before it happens. For example, to predict occupational success or higher occupational performance from scores on an aptitude test. If I give you an aptitude test and measure your abilities and then decide if you will succeed in your future work or not. In that case, it is just a prediction about the future. You have to know also that in disorders, in psychological and even physical disorders, which is referred to as prognosis, it is some sort of prediction. In any science, we need to have an ability to change or control our phenomena. And in psychology also, we try to change, influence, or control behavior to make it more better, for example, or to change the disorder and have better performance and have a change is in these symptoms. So the fourth aim in psychology is control. It is also referred to as modification. So you can say control or modification. What about the definition of control or modification? The first definition says it can be achieved by altering or changing conditions that affect or behavior in predictable way. So we have to change this behavior. to change it with some tools, with some procedures, and if we will be able to change it, this is some sort of modification or control. For example, if you get, for example, bad score in our first quiz, and I am going to change my style of teaching. Listen carefully, I am going to change my style of teaching. Why? To improve your performance. So I will change in my style of teaching to improve your performance in the second quiz. So we have independent variable. In that case, it is my style of teaching, and we have dependent variable, it is your performance in the quiz. In that case, this is some sort of control or modification. Or if I have some therapeutic procedure, for example, a procedure to treat phobia or to treat stuttering or stammering, in that case, I have some people, they have disorder, for example, phobia, depression, stuttering, stammering, any kind of disorder, and I am going to give them therapy or therapeutic procedure in order to improve them. In that case, this is some sort, this is some sort of control. So therapy or treatment is one kind of control or modification. And also we can define control or modification, in other words, as the ability to arrange for an event to happen and then modify or control it. So we have two definitions for control or modification. The first one, it says it can be achieved by altering or changing the conditions that affect the behavior. And second one, it refers to the ability to arrange for an event to happen and then modify or control it. And I give you two examples. The first one, if I am going to change my style of teaching to improve your performance, or if I am going to give a patient a therapeutic technique in order to improve or decrease his or the severity of his symptom. Now I would like to summarize again the four aims of psychology. As we said before, psychology is a science, and because psychology is a science, it has four aims, like any science. Like any science, all the sciences have these four aims, but in relation to their phenomena, the first aim is description. Description refers to naming or classifying without asking why. But if we are going to ask or to try to ask the question of why, then we moved to the second aim, which is referred to as explanation or understanding. So in that case, we are trying to discover the cause-effect relationships, or we are trying to discover the factors, mechanisms, variables that affect the behavior, that cause the behavior and maintain it. Depending on description and understanding or explanation, depending on information that now we have about the phenomena from description and explanation, we can predict it. We can make a prediction. We can now use this information to make predictions about when, why, and how it might happen again in the future. If you are now trying to modify this phenomena, to change it, to alter it, in that case, we moved to the fourth aim of psychology, which is referred to as control or modification. And we have two definitions for control or modification. The first one says it can be achieved by altering, changing conditions that affect the behavior. And the second one says that control refers to the ability to arrange for an event to happen and then modify or control it. We still have two simple points in our first chapter. The first one many times I will say psychological theory, or already I said psychological theory or psychological theories. What is the definition of psychological theory? What is the meaning of psychological theory? A theory is a systematic general principles. This is the first definition. We have two definition for the meaning of the theory. A theory is a systematic general principle or set of principles, a group of principles that explains how separate facts are related to each other. If we could be able to have a set of principles together, a group of principles, and through them we can explain the psychological phenomena, the behavior, overt and covert behavior, and discover how they are related to each other. This is referred to as theory. The second definition, theory enables the researchers to fit many facts into a larger framework. So we have a framework and we are trying to combine many facts together, and then we are trying to organize these facts, and in order to give us an opportunity to control this phenomena. In that case, this is referred to as theory. And the last issue I would like to discuss with you in this chapter, as we said before, psychology is a science because psychology applies the scientific method. So the study of psychology will be exact and systematic, and And as we said before, the scientific method is a basic strategy that's carefully designed to ensure that reliable facts are established and observation or experiments can be replicated by independent investigators or other investigators. But do we have one scientific method? No, we have one scientific method, but this scientific method includes subtypes or different subtype of scientific method. And I will mention three of these subtypes. Number one, descriptive research method. Number two, descriptive research method mainly related to the first aim of psychology. And second one, experimental research method. In this case, we do some experiments and we have independent and independent variables, and the correlational research method. So you have to know that we have at least three research methods. Number one, descriptive research method. Number two, experimental research method. Number three, correlational research methods. Now, as we said before, psychology is an academic and applied discipline that involves the scientific study of mental functions and behaviors. And psychologists attempt to understand the role of mental functions in individual and social behavior. Also, psychology interested in exploring the physiological and the biological processes that have effect on cognitive functions and the behaviors. And also, psychologists explore concepts such as perception, cognition, attention, learning, emotion, motivation or motive, brain functioning, personality traits, personality characteristics, personality disorders, behavior, overt and covert behavior, and interpersonal relationship and social interaction. Now, before moving on to our questions about chapter 1, I would like to recap or summarize what all we said in these chapters, and then moving on to the questions. Let us start with our revision, or first or brief revision about chapter 1, or main points that we covered in chapter 1. Firstly, we started with the classification of psychology, and we said psychology classified can be classified into 5 basic categories as a natural science, social science, behavioral science, life science, and the human science. And as we said before, psychology classified as a natural science because psychology is interested in the human nature, and is classified as a social science because we are interested in the social interaction between or among individuals and the group dynamics and how group operates. And psychology classified as a behavioral science because our subject matter of psychology is behavior. Either we are talking about overt behavior or covert behavior. And because psychology is interested in the human life, psychology is classified as a life science. And also because our main participants are humans, psychology is classified as a human science. Then we have two definitions of psychology. The first one defines psychology as a scientific study of overt and covert behavior in humans and animals, and second one defines psychology as a science of behavior and the mental processes, and psychology seeks to describe and explain aspects of human thoughts, feelings, perception, and action. And we have two kinds of participants in psychological research. The first one is humans and the second one is animals. And you have to remember that animals give us an opportunity to do some sort of manipulation we cannot do them with in human studies. And in animal studies we can study the lifetime, multiple generation. They are inexpensive and available. But you have to remember also that we study animals in order to generalize that on human being. So we are trying to study human being indirectly through animals in some cases in which we cannot do this manipulation in humans. And we have some ethics in psychological research. These ethics we have to apply them while we are organize our rules in psychology and while we are organize our experiments. And the subject matter of psychology involves three aspects. Number one, overt behavior. It is refers to responses that are directly observed, and covert behavior, which are indirectly observed. They are private and internal. Overt behavior such as motor activities, fine motor and gross motor, verbal communication and non-verbal communication. But covert behavior are behaviors are such as feelings, emotions, motivation, thinking, imagination, creativity, intelligence, abstraction, reasoning, all the mental processes. And then the third type or the third aspects of our interest is biological and physiological variables that correlated with behavior. Then we covered some about the difference between nature and the nurture, biological factors and environmental factors, and said we psychologists firstly were interested in the biological factors. Then they began to be interested in environmental, and now we are interested in the interaction between biological factors and environmental factors. So the focus of psychology is on individual, either alone or in interaction with others and the environment. And psychology can benefit from other disciplines that can give us an insight on the human behavior. And psychology, as we said before, is considered as a science because psychology applies a scientific method, and so the study of psychology will be exact and systematic. And already we define scientific method as a basic strategy that's carefully designed to ensure that reliable facts can be established and observation or experiments can be replicated by independent and other investigators. So we have many and many questions can be answered about human and cover his development, his abilities, his life, his interaction with others, his behavioral problems, his psychological disorders, and even his disabilities, different kind of disabilities. Then we covered some about the goals of psychology, the aims of psychology, and as science, psychology as a science has the same aims of any science else. So psychology has four aims. The description, it refers to naming or classifying without asking why. And then if you are trying to answer the question of why, so you moved to the second question or the second aim of psychology, understanding or explanation. And the third aim is prediction. It refers to the ability to forecast the behavior or predict the behavior before it happens. And the last aim is control or modification. And control or modification means that you are trying to alter or change the conditions that affect the behavior, or you are trying to arrange for an event to happen and then modify it. Then I gave you the definition of theory, and as we said before, theory is a systematic general principle or a set of principles, a group of principles that explain how separate facts are related to each other, and also theory can enable us to fit many facts into a larger framework, organizes facts, and permits a degree of control over phenomenon. So it gives us an opportunity to control or modify the phenomenon. And of course, theory depends on the information that we gathered or collected from description, understanding, prediction, and control. And you have to know that no prediction and no control if you don't have description or explanation or understanding. So the prediction and the control depend mainly on description and understanding. And we can classify these four aims into two basic categories. Basic aims and applied aims. Basic aims means description and understanding. Applied aims means control or prediction and control or modification. Then the last point was that we have three main research methods. Number one is referred to as descriptive research method. Number two is the experimental research method. And the number three is a correlational research method. That's all about chapter 1. Now we can move to our question in the next video. Thank you.